Hello students, welcome back to Conceptual Academia. My name is Sainder. I'm your biology educator. Today we are going to be studying the second part of the chapter Basics of Biology or Class 9th ICSE Board. In the first chapter of this very chapter, we covered what life is from the perspective of biological sciences. In this portion of the video, we'll be covering the cell biology or the second part of the chapter. I hope that you understood everything in the first video, and if you did not understand a portion or if you have some queries, then you can drop them down below in the comment section, and we would try to resolve all your doubts. All right. So, beginning with the second part of the chapter. The second part of the chapter speaks about cell biology. The scientific term for cell biology is cytology, which deals with the study of cells. In this part of the chapter, we'll be studying different components of cytology. The first component will be what cell actually is. The second portion deals with cell theory. The third part would be the types of cell. The fourth part would deal with the cellular compartments or the cellular organelles. And the last part of the chapter will speak about the reactions of different cells in different concentration of medium. Okay, so coming to the first portion of the chapter, what cell actually is. This we have also discussed in the first part of the chapter, that cell is nothing but it is the basic or fundamental structural and functional unit of life. Why is it the structural unit of life? Because our body, or say the body of any multicellular or unicellular organism, is composed of either one or more than that of cell. Like multicellular organisms such as humans are composed of millions and billions of cells. Then why is it known as the functional unit of life? It is also known as the functional unit of life because whatever function a complex physiological system can perform, a single cell can also perform. Or whatever function a modern day human can perform, the physiological functions can also be performed by a unicellular organism or by a single cell for that matter. So therefore, cell is known as the functional and structural basic unit of life, without which life is not possible. Therefore, cell or the cellular organization or the presence of cell in a living system is considered as a defining feature of life that we have also covered in the first part of the chapter. If you didn't see the first part of the chapter, it would be a little difficult to understand this video. So I would recommend you to go and watch the first part of the chapter first and then come back to this video. All right. Coming to the next portion of the chapter, what cell theory exactly is. So we'll be discussing everything which is relevant and to the point. We'll not be wasting any time since your exams would be near, and we'll be covering everything to the point. After studying this chapter from here, there would be no requirement to go back to another teacher or another video. So we'll be trying to cover everything that is there in your book covered under the syllabus of CISC, and we'll also take another question and answer practice session after the theory of the chapter has been done. All right. So coming to the cell theory. Cell theory was formulated by two scientists, a zoologist and a botanist. A zoologist is a scientist, a biologist, which deals about animal life, and a botanist is a scientist which deals about plant life, mostly. If we are looking at it from the broad spectrum, but there are other like allied science subjects as well in both botany and zoology. All right. Coming to the two scientists who formulated the cell theory, they were Matthias Cledden and Theodor Schwann. These two scientists together said that cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. Then they said that cell of plants, the most external layer in them would be the cell wall, whereas for cell of animals, The most external layer to that will be the cell or the plasma membrane. And all organisms are composed of either one or more than that of cell. So all organisms are composed of cells. There is an exception to the cell theory that we will study after we are done with this portion of the cell theory, which works for most of the living organisms. All right. So the cell theory was not considered complete yet after all these three postulates were developed by Matthias Cledden and Theodor Schwann. So what was the problem? They couldn't answer the question where the cell, which is the basic structural and functional unit of life, without which life is not possible, came from. So there came another scientist known as Rudolf Virchow, who said omnis cellula a cellula, which meant that all cells arise from pre-existing cells. So if we are speaking of a particular cell, where did it come from? It came from a parental cell. Where did this cell come from? This cell would have come from another parental generation of the cell. So cells will arise always from the pre-existing cells. This was the theory that completed the whole cell theory. So as we said that there is an exception to the cell theory that all organisms are composed of either one or multiple of cells. So what is the exception? Exception exception of cell theory. As we said that for an organism to be living, it would have to be living and it would have to be composed of either one or multiple of cells. But there is an organism. There are certain organisms which are not considered under the classification system of life, such as the acellular organisms. These can be either viruses, viroids, prions, or lichens. So we would just take one example of an acellular organisms, which is viruses. So these organisms are considered as a bridge between living and non-living. Why is it so? It is a controversial question whether viruses are living or not. Why is it so? Because if we take a cell and put certain virus inside of it, then the virus will show characteristics of life. But if you take the virus out of the cell, it will not show the characteristics of life. It will not multiply. It will stay as it is in crystalline format. Whereas if you put it inside of a cell in vivo condition, it will show the characteristics of life. Whereas in vitro condition, it will not show any characteristics of life. And the virus is not composed of any cell. It only has a protein coat which is known as capsid and a nucleic acid. And its nucleic acid which would be either single stranded or double stranded DNA or RNA. The examples of virus can be human immunodeficiency virus, which is responsible for causing AIDS, then herpes simplex virus, which is responsible for causing herpes, genital herpes, and there can be another example such as T4 bacteriophage, which is responsible for killing bacteria. Then there can be either other viruses such as TMV or CMV, which are tobacco mosaic and cauliflower mosaic virus. How do the virus look like? So they can be of different forms. Coming to the example of T4 bacteriophage, it will look something like this. So a T4 bacteriophage will look something like this, where it will consist of its nucleic acid inside of a protein coat known as the capsid. The unit of capsid is known as capsomere. If I draw the structure of TMV, it will be a little bit more clear. So this is the structure of a typical T4 phage or phage virus. How does a tobacco mosaic virus look like? It will look something like, so a tobacco mosaic virus will look something like this, where it would be its nucleic acid and this will be the protein coat or the capsid, whereas the single units which are comprising of the whole capsid are known as capsomeres. So this is the exception of a cell theory because it does not consist of a complete cell, but it contains only the nucleic acid part and the protein part, which is the capsid of the cell, capsid of the organism. And this shows characteristics of living inside in vivo conditions, but it does not show any characteristics of life and exist as a crystalline solid outside of the cell or in vitro conditions. All right, coming back to the topic, we were discussing cell biology, where we have discussed the cell theory, and after that now we are going to discuss what are the different types of cells, and then we would be covering what the different cellular organelles are. So the types of cells. Cells can either be prokaryotic or eukaryotic. Prokaryotic cell refers to cells with primitive nucleus, where the nucleus is not very well defined, and eukaryotic organisms refer to cells or organisms with well defined nucleus. All right. So there will be certain differences of ribosomes as well, which will be found in prokaryotic and eukaryotic systems. Then we'll have to keep in mind that the prokaryotic organisms are the primitive ones, which were developed like way back, and eukaryotic organisms are modern day organisms. The examples of prokaryotes will include members of kingdom Monera, such as bacteria, and eukaryotic organisms will include everything from protists to most complex animals, which are humans. Okay, how will a prokaryotic cell look like? If we are speaking of a bacteria, then it might contain a locomotory organ, which is the flagella, or it can also contain certain small locomotory organs such as cilia. All right. Then for gripping, it might have small projections known as fimbriae, for a sort of primitive sexual reproduction. There is a controversy whether this will be a type of sexual reproduction or not, as there is no fusion or formation of gametes, but it looks somewhat like a sexual reproduction. It does, the bacteria often does this with the help of an organelle, which is, or a part of it, which is known as pili or pilus. What is the function of this pilus? Suppose this is a bacteria, it will have its pilus, it will conjugate and get attached with another bacteria without having that pilus, and it will have its close extra chromosomal DNA which it will transfer to this very bacterium, and this bacterium will be converted into HFR plus or high frequency recombinant. So what is the benefit of doing this? This step is known as conjugation. It is a type of bacterial reproduction. This ensures that it will provide certain resistance, say for example, an antibiotic resistance to the new bacteria, where it becomes the high frequency recombinant, and now the particular antibiotic which was working for this bacteria will not work for this bacteria anymore, and it will replicate and form different copies which will be all antibiotic resistance bacteria. All right, coming to the structure of prokaryote, it will not contain a nucleus. Instead of that, it will contain a region where nucleic acid will be formed in a cluster. This will be known as the nucleoid. This is not the true nucleus. It will not have a particular boundary. It will also have an extra chromosomal circular DNA, which will be known as plasmid. So plasmid can either be present or not. Whatever was getting like transferred from a particular bacteria to another was the plasmid only, which is the closed extra chromosomal circular DNA. All right. So cytoplasm will be present. Several other organelles will be present, but that is not very important. But you will have to understand that there are three layers on the external of a bacteria. What are those layers? There is cell membrane, then there is cell wall. Cell membrane is present in animals and plants, whereas cell wall is exclusively present in plants and certain other organisms such as fungi. There is another layer which is present in bacteria as well, which is known as the glycocalyx. So this is the typical structure of a prokaryotic cell. Coming to eukaryotic cells, there are different kingdoms which are included under eukaryotes. Under eukaryota, there can be either protists, members of kingdom fungi, plantae, or animalia. In this class, we'll only be discussing these two, plantae and animalia, and the functional differences between a plant and an animal cell. So all these cells will be examples of eukaryotic cells only. Coming to plant cells, this will look something like this. Pardon my drawing. So this portion will be its cell wall. It will contain a long tubular structure which will help in cellular communication with adjacent cells, which is known as the plasmodesmata. It will contain a large vacuole which will help in the storage of materials. It will contain certain granules, cytoplasm, the cell membrane, the mitochondria, plastid or chloroplast, which is responsible for generating the chlorophyll pigment, which is a green colored pigment in plant and essential for various physiological processes in the system of plants. Now coming to animal cells, it will not have a cell wall, whereas it will have its external layer as the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. I am drawing rough structures here because we'll be covering all of the organelles in detail after we give you a brief overview to you. The plasma membrane. All right. Also, there will be a nucleus in the plant cell as well. So there is a nucleus in the animal cell and a nucleolus. All right. If we draw a particular eukaryotic structure, generally we take the example of animal cell because it is the most easiest one. Okay. If I draw an animal cell here, it will contain certain parts, such as the most external part will be the cell membrane or the plasma membrane. We'll be looking into the detailed structure of all these organelles as well after we are done with this portion, which is the brief overview of a particular eukaryotic cell where we are taking into account an animal cell. Then there would be the nucleus and the nucleolus. And the nucleus. The fluid matrix present inside of the cell is known as cytoplasm, which is the arena of all cellular activities, major cellular activities. Then there will be mitochondria, which is responsible for generating ATP or adenosine triphosphate in a cell, where it is connected with three phosphate groups. The last bond is broken to release energy, which is essential for every catabolic or anabolic activities, and it is also known as the energy currency of the cell, which is the adenosine triphosphate. It is manufactured by mitochondria in animal cells. All right. What can be the different organelles except those? There can be another organelle known as the endoplasmic reticulum. This was the mitochondria, by the way. The endoplasmic reticulum also has two parts. The part which is in continuation with the nuclear membrane is known as the rough endoplasmic reticulum, because ribosomes will be attached to the surface. Ribosomes are responsible for protein manufacturing in our cell, and since it is increasing the surface area of a portion of endoplasmic reticulum which is in continuous with the nuclear envelope, it is known as rough endoplasmic reticulum. Whereas the other portion of the endoplasmic reticulum where there is no attachment of ribosome is known as the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. These have also certain activities in membrane biosynthesis or in the manufacturing of plasma membrane as well. Now, these two, the nucleus and the plasma membrane, these two and the cytoplasm will form the protoplasm of the cell. Protoplasm is the complete living matter of the cell. So it will include the nucleus and the cytoplasm and plasma membrane. Whereas in case of plant cells, the cell wall will be eliminated from the protoplasm because cell wall is generated thought to be dead cell, dead portion of the cell. The living portion of the cell is known as the protoplasm, whereas the dead portion of the cell is known as the apoplasm, and the things secreted from it are known as apoplasmic substances. All right. So this is the brief overview of what a cell is and what are the different cellular organelles. In case of animals, also there will be small vacuoles, either they can be present or not, and they will be numerous. Whereas in case of plant cells, there will be a long and large vacuole, which will be consisting of nearly 50 to 70% of the cellular compartment. And there can be other organelles such as the Golgi apparatus, which is responsible for packaging, parceling, and transport of different materials across the cell. Then there can be another thing such as the lysosome, which is the used for eliminating whatever substance is unessential for the cell, and ATP is utilized even to transport cell from a particular space to lysosome. And here certain digestive enzymes are present which are low in pH, and therefore the lysosome is responsible for degrading whatever material the cell thinks is useless or requires to be eliminated. So what are the things that we have covered till now? We have covered what cell actually is, the cell theory, and the different types of cells. And I have given you the types of cellular organelles that we are going to study in the next portion of the chapter as well, where here we have covered all these portions, which are what cell actually is, what is the cell theory and its significance, and the exception to the cell theory as well. What are the different types of cells, such as the prokaryotic and the eukaryotic cells? Under eukaryotic cells, we have also discussed the plant cell and the animal cells. We will also be studying the reactions of these cells under the different concentrations of medium and the different cellular organelles in detail as well. So I hope that you have understood this portion of the chapter. In the last portion, we will be covering the cellular organelles in detail and the reaction of the cells, and by then revise the first and the second portion of the video and comment down whatever doubt that you have, and you can also give us some recommendations on how we can improve the quality of the video, how we can include the quality of, we can improve the quality of our education, whereas everything that we are providing you is top notch quality, and you would not have the requirement of going anywhere else after the contents of the video are completed, and will be efficient for you to fetch maximum marks in your examination. So I hope that you guys like this portion of the chapter. In the last portion, we will be concluding the chapter, and after that we'll be also bringing another video where we'll be discussing the most important and probable questions from this chapter. So thank you guys. Like our video, share it with your peers and friends, and subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell down below so that you can be updated with the videos that we post on our channel. Thank you guys.